Hello everyone and welcome to the Headline Money pre-Masterclass video with myself, Scott McGee, content editor at Headline Money, and Neil Jones, who is the tax and estate planning specialist at Canada Life, who will be presenting the masterclass next week on Wednesday, the 18th of November at 10 a.m. Thanks a lot for joining me, Neil.
Very, very pleased to be here, Scott.
So I guess we'll dive in straight away. What's happening in the tax and estate planning sector right now as we speak?
Well, there's a lot of expectations because obviously the government's had to increase their spending quite a lot this year due to COVID. So changes are expected. There was going to be a budget in the autumn, this autumn we're in now, but that's been put off. So hopefully it'll be the early part of next year and that'll give us an idea about what the government's plans are moving forward in the longer term.
Yeah. Cool. So how much I know obviously this year there's been a lot of challenges to all sectors, but generally how much does the tax and estate planning sector change? So to phrase it another way, how much do journalists have to kind of refresh their knowledge and kind of keep up to date with everything that's happening?
Yeah, the legislation doesn't necessarily change that much, but the needs and demands of investors does. So the articles that get written and the information that gets provided needs to be up to date and make sure that it's highlighting the current trends and the current concerns that people have.
Fair enough. Is it a difficult topic to cover? I guess obviously you're an expert, so you've been covering it for a while, but for any new journalists coming in, is it a difficult subject to pick up and cover?
Some aspects of it, certainly the high level straightforward and very, very simple to understand. It's when you start delving into the intricacies of how they work and the interactions between different taxes sometimes can cause some confusions, but there's also a lot of misconceptions out there that the public have. So it's important just to keep on top of things to make sure that whatever you're saying is current and is topical and correct. Yeah.
How important is that, like making sure that in this era of fake news, how important is it that all information passed on by journalists to either consumer or within trade journalism, is that all the information is correct and accurate?
It's very important because people do read the newspapers. They do take a lot of information in, whether they be advisors or members of the public. So they do take that in, and it's very important to make sure that what you're saying is correct or is not wrong. Obviously, it's difficult to get into the ins and outs of every different aspect, but certainly it's important to make sure there's no incorrect information in there. But as I say, it can be a fine line between being correct and being incorrect. So it's just important to bear that in mind.
So, in terms of which sector do you think there is the most most contentious, where people may be getting the wrong information? Which sectors do you find that occurs most often?
Tends to be one of the most contentious one is inheritance tax. It's almost a universally disliked tax. So people do try and reduce the amount of inheritance tax that will fall due, and so they tend to try different things, and you have to be very careful because if it involves giving money away, you can't necessarily get that back. So it's important to make sure that's correct. And obviously with capital gains, that's mooted as around as being something that's going to change quite dramatically next year. So that's another important area for investors to look at. Okay.
And there's been a government announcement in the last couple of days, I believe on Wednesday evening. So kind of what was that announcement and what does it involve, and how much do journalists have to pay attention to that?
Yes, there was what the Office of Tax Simplification have reviewed capital gains tax. There's two reviews going on, so there's two reports they're producing. The first one came out on Wednesday, and it just talks about their review. They don't have any powers to change anything, but they just look at it and they say, right, this is working or this isn't working, this is keeping within government policy and this part isn't. So it's important just to bear in mind that what they've come up with is something that may happen in the future. So the Chancellor may take on board some of their suggestions.
Okay, and so are you going to be covering all this in your masterclass next week?
Yes, we will. Maybe not in depth because of time constraints, but certainly we will touch on it. It'll be mainly around inheritance tax and capital gains tax because they're the two that we find that investors struggle with most or want to understand most, and that will appeal to journalists because obviously they're writing the content for them to read.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Neil. If you want to sign up to watch the masterclass next Wednesday at 10 a.m. you can do so by clicking the links on the Headline Money website or on our social medias, by Twitter and LinkedIn. That's next week, 10 a.m. with Neil Jones, the tax and estate planning specialist at Canada Life. Thank you very much for joining me, Neil, and I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday.
Yeah, see you next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.